In today's tutorial, we are going to deal with a JavaScript problem that was presented by one of the viewers. The solution to this problem will require a unique use of the reduce method and a custom function passed into the sort method. Before we get started, make sure to click that bell button and subscribe, and remember the discount links to all my courses in the description. Also, my website has a list of all the tutorials I publish. There are over 200 now. So one of the viewers presented a unique problem, and the solution to this problem requires some more in-depth understanding of some of the methods available in JavaScript. So what I want to do is present the problem, and then we'll walk through the solution. Now, the solution uses the reduce method of arrays and the sort method. If you're unfamiliar with these, I would recommend watching some of my other tutorials on these methods. I will link to them in the description. All right, so let's take a look at what the exact problem is. So we have here an array of objects. As you can see, each object inside this array has an ID, a status, and then the name of a book. The status is either completed, in progress, or not started. That's what we have. And a full array of, let's see, about 7 objects here. And what was desired is that we could take this array and process it so the output would look like this. We would have an array, and then inside of that array we'd have 3 objects. One with a status of completed, another with a status of in progress, and then a third with a status of not started. And then inside of those 3 objects we would list another array attached to the book's property, another array with all of the objects, the ID and the name of the book that belong to that status. So completed, in progress, and not started. So, bit difficult problem. And whenever you run into a difficult problem, what you want to do is you want to break it down. So as I was looking at this, I realized, well, this really has 2 parts to me. There's one part where I want to reorganize everything into these 3 objects that are inside of an array, and then the objects inside of that. So I want to reorganize everything. And then the other thing that needs to be done, and I didn't mention this, but inside of each of these, it needs to be sorted by the title. See how the titles are sorted here? So it's not by ID, it's by title. And so that would be the second thing that I needed to complete. Now, I realized that I could do the reorganization using the reduce method. Now, so you may be saying, well, how did you know that you could do that? Well, if you use it, when you use it and you use it a lot, then sometimes these things come to you. You know what's possible with the reduce method, and so you know what you can do. And I figured, I can probably do the reorganization with the reduce method. Reduce method is really powerful if you really know how to use it. And so that's what I thought. And then I thought, well, once I have that, then I'll go ahead and sort it. So those are the 2 things I broke it down into. So what I'm going to do is I have the start array here, and in between that and the output, what the output is supposed to be, that's where I'm going to create my solution. We'll talk about it as we do it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to use the reduce method to reorganize things. So let me set that up initially. So I'm going to assign the results that is returned from the reduce method to this final variable. Start is an array, and reduce is a method on arrays. Okay. Now remember, if you need to review the reduce method, I have multiple tutorials on that, which I've linked to. But basically, the reduce method takes 2 parameters. One is a function. So reduce is a higher order function. It takes another function as a parameter. And so we have a function, and then the second parameter I'll talk about in just a minute. I want to introduce our function first. Now, with the function that's provided, we have at least 2 variables that we want to use in that function, 2 parameters. We can use more if we want, but we want to have at least 2. Now, what reduce does, remember, is it iterates through every element of an array. So if we look at this array up here, it's going to go through each one of these objects. It will iterate through each one of those. Each one of those objects will be placed in the obj variable of the function that we're passing in, okay? So this is the function I'm passing in. I've declared that obj variable. That is going to have each object as we iterate through those objects. So what's this here? Well, what happens when as reduce iterates through things, it'll process the element that is passed into this variable and return the results to this variable. Okay, and then it will process the next one, return the results to this variable. So what that allows us to do is build upon whatever we have here. And that's what I'm going to be doing as a solution here. I'm going to set something up as a starting point for this accumulator value. And then as I process each object, I'm going to add to that. Now, it helps to see the solution if we set this up first, because this is a more complex solution for reduce. And so I'm going to set that up. Now, what I want the end result to be is something that matches the output. So I want an array, and then I want 3 objects with a status property and a books property, okay? So in order to set up the initial value of this accumulator, the value it is the first element that it processes, that is our second parameter. That's the parameter that comes after the function. And so I'm going to set that up so that I know what I'm working with here. Then as it processes the first element, we'll add to it. It will return it, process the next element, add to it, return it, and so on, until the end result looks like this. Not sorted yet, but has it organized into these 3 objects with status completed, in progress, and not started. All right. So let's go ahead and set that up first, because then that will allow us to see what we're working with here. So if I go ahead and start it with an array, because I know it is an array, and then I'm going to place 3 objects inside of it. And you can guess what those 3 objects are going to be. And I'm just going to copy this in so I can talk about it and not have to type. So as you can see, the objects have a property of status with completed, and then a books property with an empty array. Status is in progress, books property, empty array. Status not started, books property, empty array. So this is our initial accumulator that's going to be passed into this variable. As we iterate through each object, we'll look at this object, process it, add to the accumulator, return it, and then continue to add to it. And the end result will be what we're after. All right. So let's go ahead and take steps for processing the object that comes in. So when this object comes in, we first want to make sure and check what status it is, because that's going to determine which object it goes into. Now, since we have 3 statuses, what I'm going to use here is I'm going to use a switch statement, because we got to check 3 different statuses. What am I doing the switch statement on? Well, obj, this will be the object. As it iterates through, each object is placed in that variable. So it'll be obj.status. That's what we're going to be looking at with the switch statement. All right. Now we will have 3 cases. We're going to have case completed. And I'm going to come down here and do a break. That's how we have to do each case statement. Another case. So I'm setting up my case statements here, and then I'll fill in the information. In progress, like that. Colon after that will come down another line, break. That'll break out of the switch. Case. The last case is not started. Okay. Whoops. That was not what I wanted to do. Neither is that. I need a colon there. Okay, and then we'll break out of that one as well. Okay, so there's our switch statement here. We have our block, and then inside that we have cases. Each time it looks at the obj.status, it'll match one of these cases. Depending on which one it matches, it will do what we have inside of here. So what we want after the case statement is we want to add the object to the appropriate array in our accumulator value. And then we want to return that accumulator value. We have to return it in order for it to be placed in this variable for the next iteration. So we need to return it each time so that we continue to build upon it. All right? So if it is a complete, if the status is complete, then what we're going to do is we're going to take that accumulator, and which one do we want to add it to? Well, if we look down here, completed is the first object of the array. In progress is second. Not started is third. So we can refer to each of those, because this is an array, using our regular array notation. Dot books. So that it will be the books property of that object. And we want to add to that. So what are we going to add to that? Well, we want to add to it an array. And what do we want to put in that array? Well, we want to put in an ID. And where's that ID going to come from? It's going to come from obj.id, this object that we're looking at here. And we also want to put a name. And where is that name going to come from? Well, that's going to come from obj.name. Simple as that, right? Now we're adding that object in there. But as we iterate through, we need to include objects that have already been added. So we may go through that first object, add it to the correct status object down here, but we don't want to replace it with just the next one that comes along. We want to include it if it's a part of the accumulator already. So how do we do that? Well, the way we can do that is just using the spread operator on that exact same property, dot books, and then a comma. So what this is going to do is take anything that's already inside that books array. It's going to spread it out so it'll go inside of this new array we've created. And then we also add this new object we've identified. All right? So that's how we're going to accomplish that. And then once we've got that done, we simply return ACC. We have to return it again so it'll be here for our next iteration. So that's basically what we want to do there. Now if I take that and I just paste it for each of these cases, it's not really going to change for any of those. We're going to do the same thing for each of those cases. The one thing that will change, of course, is which object in the accumulator we're working with. See, in progress will be the second one, and not started will be the third one. So we identify those as we normally would in an array. All right? So there we go. Let's see what we get out of that. Let's see what final returns. So if I save that, and I come out here, let me refresh this, and then we'll take a look at that. And it looks like we got a problem here. Let's go correct that. All right, a lot of times it can just be something silly, and I think that's my problem there. Completed, I had complete instead of completed as a status. What did I do down here? Yep, okay, I got it right down here. I just have it wrong on the case. Let's see if that corrects it. Go out here, refresh, not getting an error. Let's see what final produces for us. So we got 3 objects inside that array, so that's good. And the status are right, and it looks like we've got the arrays right as well. If we go and look at those, let's see, books. Ender's Game 1984 are all inside of completed. Lord of the Rings, Ender's Game in 1984, and I believe that's correct. Lord of the Rings completed. Ender's Game completed, 1984 completed. Yeah, so looks like it's doing it correctly. So that solved the first part of it. Now we need to sort these inside of these objects, inside of each of these books array that we have in here. All right, so we're going to do that with the sort method, but we need to sort each. Well, if we just look at the output here we have, I can use that as an example. We need to sort each object meaning the object that has the status of completed, the object that has a status of in progress, and then not started. We need to sort each one of those and sort the books array inside of each one of those. So there's 3 separate objects we need to sort. And so that was the tricky part of using this sort feature. And the way we can go through and sort each one of those is, this is an array here. So I can go use map and use map to return a new array. And as we iterate through that array, we're going to have 3 objects. We're going to have the one that has status completed, in progress, and not started. And so I'll sort each one of those as I pull those out. Now map, like reduce, is going to iterate through every element in the array. But what map does instead is it returns a new array. Okay? A new array, where reduce, we can return whatever we want. Map specifically returns a new array. So we're going to use map to go through those. And we need to pass in a function. And the function we're going to pass in is going to have a parameter for the object. So it's going to get all 3 of those objects as it iterates through. And then what are we going to do with each of those objects? Well, we are going to go to the books property and we are going to sort. All right. So there is how we get to each object and able to sort each object, is that little bit right there. So this sort will sort that object, then it will be returned, and it will be, because of the map feature, it will be placed into a new array, and we'll have it sorted. Now, I describe it that way, but technically the sort method modifies an array in place. It doesn't return a new array. And so it's going to modify the array in place, but we're using the map method in order to iterate through each of those objects in order to do that. Now with sort, you can just do a standard sort, or you can pass in, it also is a higher order function, so you can pass in a function and that function will do the sort. Now the way that works is, if you're passing in a function, you need to have that function return a positive one, or I should say a positive number, or a negative number, or 0. And depending upon what you return will determine the order of the items. Because the function you pass in, I'm going to set that up right now, takes 2 parameters. And basically it's the first 2 parameters it needs to sort. And it's going to compare those 2 items. And then if we return a number greater than 0, it's going to put the BK2, is going to put it before BK1. If we return less than 0, it's going to put this before that. If we return 0, it'll keep them the same. All right. So that's what this function needs to do. It's going to look at each of those books. So what I want to do is I go through each of the books in the array. I want to look at them and then return a number based upon what order they should go in. So here's how I'm going to do it. This is now the function. I'm now writing the function that's going to be passed into the sort method. All right. And first thing it's going to do is it's going to take bk1.name and it's going to convert it to a string like that, and then it's going to take and convert it to lowercase as well. I'm doing this so we can compare them properly. And then what I want to do is check to see if it is less than bk2.name.toString.toLowercase. Whoops. Like that. Now, if it's less than, what am I going to return? I'm going to return a -1. Otherwise, I'm going to return a positive value like that. Okay. So once again, if I return a negative value, it's going to put A before B. Okay. If I return a positive value, it'll put B before A. A being this one, B being that one. All right. And that should sort them for us. And the map method will go through each of those objects. So we sort each of those objects and return them. So let's go ahead and give that a try. Let me save that. And then let's take a look at final one more time because it's being edited in place. And now if we open up and look at the books array here, and they are sorted where they were not before. Check this one. Whoops. Looking at the prototype, so the books array. That one's sorted as well. And that one's sorted. All right. So that was a pretty complex solution. And you may need to rewatch this multiple times. But basically, we broke it apart. We first organized things using the reduce method, and then we used the map method so I could go through each of those 3 objects, and then within each object, I sorted, and I passed in a function to determine the sort. All right, I hope that makes sense. If not, ask a question, and I'll try to address it in the comments. All right, please hit the like button and subscribe. And remember the discount links to all my courses in the description section. Click that bell button to be notified about new releases. I release a new tutorial as often as I can. And then once again, thanks for watching.